Stop.
Okay.
Yeah, we just fade out. We on it? Hi, it's Ron Carter. Today is February 27, I think. Uh, another week has gone by, and I've had some interesting comments from you through the last meeting, and I thank you for all of them. Uh, this evening, wherever you are, morning and afternoon, I've had some students who lived in New York who have gone to other states and have questioned me about what should they ask a teacher, should they look for in a teacher. So I gave them 5 things to think about asking the teacher, and I'll read them off to you if you're just tuning in. Number 1 is, how many lessons do I have with you? Number 2, how much do you travel, and will I miss any lessons as a result of your travel? Another one was, can I record the lessons? And number 10 in your list, or number 5 in mine is, what's the length of the lessons? I have 5 more questions here that I would ask a teacher if I recommended to do this. So here they are. Number 1, do you play with an amp? And 1A, can you show me how? Number 2, what method books do you use? 3, what is most important to you, playing great time or playing great solos? Number 4, do your students do baseline transcriptions? And one more, are you available to attend any of my performances? And 10A would be, or 7A on my list would be, can I get the admission fee waived when I attend any of your performances? These are things I think a student who is looking for a teacher in a strange environment to him, he's new into the country, he's new to the state, new to the neighborhood, who wants to study. And I think that these questions are questions that he has to ask. And once he gets them answered or not answered, give him a chance to figure out if this teacher is the teacher for him or her. I say teacher broadly. We all think we're kind of, for our propaganda, our own commentary, our own way we feel about the instrument, and we all look through the bass through our own windows. Should their windows look different than mine, don't be offended. Don't feel that I've taught you less and they're teaching you more. That's just another concept, and your job is to figure out which concept fits best what you think you hear. Perhaps now we'll open the floor, so to speak, right here for some questions concerning these ideas. And if you have any other questions about this, you can go to my site and email me through the site, and I will certainly get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. And the first question is,
So far, we're only getting greetings
oh, hey,
from Canada,
that's a question.
Ireland, Bordeaux, France, and Brazil.
Wow, thanks for the greetings. It's a nice day to have New York. It's one shiny day here, a little windy, but the weather's great, and it's nice to have you chiming in and being right where we are.
Could you elaborate more on the what's more important to you, playing great time or playing great solos question?
Well, I've never heard of a bass player who got hired for a gig who played a great solo. And it just seems to me that we, the public, have kind of missed out on what the bassist function is primarily. That isn't to say he should not be able to solo, he or she would not be able to take a great solo, however you define it. But I think one of the things that makes a bass player's job most critical is, can he control the band's harmony? Can he control the dynamic of the band? Can he control the rhythm of the band? Can he make the band sound like he belongs, that bass player in that band? There's some small details that go along with that, like being on time and owning a tuxedo. But that's what I mean by those kind of factors. And I would certainly feel comfortable to ask a teacher whom I was interested in studying with, give me a hint on your view on these questions.
We're getting more regards from Colombia and Detroit, Michigan. And we have a goofy question asking, would you consider having a tea from Raymond Dore? But he continues. He says, would you consider having both a jazz teacher and also classical teacher at the same time?
No. I think their concepts are generally pretty basically different. And I think a jazz player's curiosity is what makes him apart from the classical player's general library. Uh, the reaction time for a jazz player who's playing quarter note time and playing with different groups and freelancing, his time and note choices are critical on the moment. A classical player generally has plenty of time to know the library. He can know the fingerings from his teacher's teacher's teacher. And they're less concerned with the immediacy of the satisfactory of playing a good set of notes. And when I say this, I don't mean to have you think I think less of them. Clearly not it. But I think the concepts of what makes the bass work are so different from the classical library and concepts to the bassist needs and their libraries. I think that the two conflicting concepts are more than the student need to have to deal with. By and large, a good jazz player can show you some classical concepts and some classical libraries. I'm not so sure a classical bassist can show you the same thing with a jazz player.
Another question, any nice exercises with harmony on the bass from Spiros Stilobate?
I have a couple of books that are now in my catalog that answer that question. If you go on my site and go to the website after this program, you'll see a list of my catalog, my library catalog, and it shows you books that answer that question in much more detail than time would allow right now. Thanks for the question.
Paulo Santos is saying, finding a teacher is a big problem for me as I have many interests with my bass playing. I like jazz, Brazilian music, and classical repertoire, and I tend to have lessons with every bad cat I can find around. The problem is my learning does not seem consistent. Is there some way of making all of this into, like, putting it all together?
I think the first problem is you have too many teachers, and it depends on how close they are, the lessons. You have a lesson with a Brazilian bass player on Monday, and a lesson with a jazz player on Wednesday, and a classical player on Friday. I think there's too many concepts to be involved with. You should kind of focus on, one, learning the instrument. A classical player can show you the kind of detail, the scales and arpeggios. The jazz player can show you the changes and how they run on the instrument. My book deals with both these concepts. I think what your first problem is the issue is to limit your number of lessons with different teachers in such a confined space of time. It's too much to ask for someone to be able to grasp and put all those things into place. So my first thing to you would be to get one teacher and spend 2 or 3 months there and enjoy what they can show you.
Thank you. Another question, James Joyner. Hello, Mr. Carter. Can you elaborate more on the use of bass amps and the best way to use them?
Well, there's an ongoing discussion about whether the bass player should be amplified or not. And if you've known my history and my conversation before, I'm not a fan of an unamplified bass player playing. This program is a little short, so I won't give you all my reasons, but I think the primary reason is I want everybody to hear all of his notes. And the theory is that everyone plays quiet enough and the rooms are so acoustically perfect that you can hear every note. That is not true. What I recommend the bass player do is learning how to use amps is go to, most bass shops have amplifiers. In New York, David Gage has a great setup on his second floor where he has different amps. You can go to certain places in the big stores in New York, they have amps up in the corner. Just try an amp with your bass and see what amp do you think best helps the bass get past your nose, so to speak. The caveat here is that you have to put a great sound into the amp. Amps do not make you sound great sounding if you have something that's this big, and all the amp does is make this big sound, this small sound louder, but doesn't make it any better. So my first thing for you to do is get a great sound that makes amplifying that great sound a lot less complicated. But I'm not of the school of thought that an unamplified bass is a successful bass at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Gabe Monticello. He says, hello from the other side. What questions do you think that the teacher should ask the student before taking them in?
What I do when I have students who email me who want to take lessons is, have you studied before? Because most of them have not taken lessons in a very long time. 2, what books did you use when you studied? 2, you want to be a jazz player? Do you want to be a classical player? What are you looking for? And I generally ask them off the top to send me a list of the 10 things that you think you do well. And of those 10 things, list the 5 things in this list that you think you need help with. That gives me a hint of how they think their talent is, how good they think they play, and what they think they need the most help with. And I also ask them, if possible, to send me a current recording so I can hear what kind of sound they have, what kind of tunes they play, whether they play the changes, how their intonation is. It gives me a better idea of whether I think I can help them in the short haul.
Kevin Tardeve is asking, did you have other mentors in your musical path other than double bass teachers?
Well, I think everyone has a bass teacher mentor because they're the people who you see most of the time to try to get better at playing the instrument. That question generally refers to my jazz mentors, and I didn't have one per se. I admired J.J. Johnson's ability to play all those notes in a very short range of the trombone. And I admired Cecil Payne, a great baritone saxophone player, who was able to make his horn the same horn that Jerry Mulligan used, that Sir Charloff used, that was the current baritone of the time. That saxophone that he played sounded like Cecil Payne. And those are probably the two biggest influences that helped me decide that this is what I want to do and this is my approach to make it kind of work for me.
Our last question from Sam Dingle. Do you
Hi,
think
Sam.
it's important to want to sound exactly like your teacher? For example, should you want or try to emulate your teacher's sound or even setup? Or is that not necessary?
Well, I kind of trust my students to find their own way, but they necessarily have to start somewhere. And I think that most teachers are a great place to start that somewhere. I have a concept and a way of playing pretty decent lines, and I wouldn't mind a student investigating that. I have never made it necessary or what's the right word? It has to be that way to play like I play. I'm not looking for a clone. I'm looking for someone who understands what I'm trying to do as best they can and see if they can develop that idea from my germ, from my first seed. And I think it's interesting to have that question in that I found some classical players I've talked to are really curious and make an effort to sound like their teacher. I'm not necessarily a fan of the jazz players because they have so many choices of sounds and note choices and environments that kind of make my concept for them not necessarily the right concept for this group or for this key of this band. So I appreciate the thought that I'm worth that player, but I'd rather have them just understand what I try to do and use this as a jumping board to finding their own way, whether it's the note choices, whether it's the kind of strings I use, whether it's the kind of pickup I use. Those things lead to improvements. If I can be at the start of your improvement, let me have it. Thanks. It's time for me to get out of here, so I have a few 5 notes to play and to invite you to come back 1 month from today and bring some questions. And if you have any responses to these questions today, feel free to let me know. I'm going over here from in my corner. Be right back. next month.
We're out. Yes.
Okay.
Oh wow, this is so good. Especially the playing. Wow. We had a lot of questions that we just like cutting through because otherwise it would have lasted for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a lot of other questions. So don't be surprised if people also start writing through
Please,
the
yeah,
website.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
I'll direct them
Yeah,
there
yeah.
for sure.